Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. 70% of all condiments in the world are produced in India. In the Middle Ages and until 1800, it was common for animals such as dogs, pigs, cows, and even rats to be brought to court to be judged if they were accused of breaking a law or committing moral offenses. Archaeologists found fossilized bread made in Pompeii in the 1st century. This bread was stamped with a Roman inscription that was required by bakeries to prevent counterfeiting. There are black bears that have white fur. They are called spirit bears and are a subspecies. Their color is not due to albinism or because they are polar bears. The Empire State Building was originally expected to be built in more than 18 months, but it was completed in just 15. In addition, it had a total cost of $24.7 million, which represented only 57% of the planned budget. 99.99% of the entire universe will be impossible for humans to visit, no matter how long we travel, due to cosmic expansion. Galaxy clusters are moving away faster than we could travel. The only way would be to invent a science fiction travel method such as hyperspace jumps or wormholes. It was discovered that octopuses build cities to live and socialize. These consist of sea objects such as corals and shells that they gather like an artificial reef. They also use these places to protect themselves from predators. According to the infinite monkey theorem, if you put a monkey pressing keys on a typewriter for an infinite period of time, it will eventually manage to write any text in existence, including the complete works of William Shakespeare or Don Quixote. Of course, this does not refer to a real monkey, because otherwise, it would have to be a very patient and immortal monkey. Ancient humans hunted glyptodonts, giant armadillos that are now extinct. They used their shells as shelters to live in, like a kind of tent. After the movie The Princess and the Frog was released, more than 50 people in different countries were reported to have been hospitalized with salmonella after kissing frogs they found. In 2013, a man named Harrison Okine survived for 3 days at the bottom of the ocean in a sunken ship because he found air trapped in one of the rooms. It is estimated that there are approximately 3 million shipwrecks on the ocean floor, containing billions in gold and valuable objects. A study was once conducted at the University of Sheffield about the type of entertainment children like the most, which included a survey asking if they liked clowns. Of the 250 children surveyed, all said they did not like clowns or were afraid of them. The first food eaten on the moon was bacon. Although it was dried and compressed into cubes, it still technically counts as bacon. It was part of the food carried by astronauts on the Apollo 11 mission in 1969. Lake Chagan in Kazakhstan is the only lake that has been artificially created by a nuclear test. This happened on January 15, 1965. The bottom of this place has a glass-like surface because the rocks there melted during the explosion. Currently, swimming or fishing there is still prohibited. The Nepal owl has feathers on the front part of its body that appear to have heart shapes. However, it is seen as an evil animal in countries such as Sri Lanka due to a legend and the strange sounds it makes at night. According to a scientific estimate, an average cloud weighs the same as 11 adult elephants. The denser or grayer a cloud is, the heavier it is. Oranges do not have as much vitamin C as one might think. Foods such as guavas, peppers, and broccoli have more than twice this vitamin per gram. License plates for automobiles in the Northwest Territories region of Canada are shaped like polar bears. In that area, only the rear plate is required for vehicles. Until recently, it was believed that giraffes did not make any kind of sound. But after analyzing more than 1,000 hours of audio over 8 years, it was discovered that they do make a sound, but it is at a very low frequency due to their long necks. The city of New York paid $5 million in 1853 for the land that Central Park now occupies. Currently, the cost of that place would be $530 billion, since it is located in one of the areas where the cost per square foot is among the most expensive. According to research, more than 7,000 people die each year due to doctors' poor handwriting. When trying to interpret the prescription, they receive the wrong medication. Donkeys, or asses, can observe their 4 legs at the same time. This is because of the position of their eyes on their head. Despite what is believed and their name, they are very intelligent and friendly animals. Skittles-type candies and jelly beans contain an ingredient made from insect shells that is used as a candy coating to give them their characteristic shine. The stickers that some fruits have to indicate their brand are made with edible paper and ink, and the glue used to attach them is also food grade. This is in case someone eats one by accident. Wild bananas are full of seeds and are very small. The ones we can buy in supermarkets were selectively cultivated over the years so that the seeds would be tiny. The tusk of narwhals, which has always been studied by biologists, was discovered to actually be a tooth that grows through the upper lip. It is soft and covered with tiny holes filled with water, making it a sensory organ similar to a nose or eyes. According to fossil records, the oldest relative of penguins existed 60 million years ago. This means their ancestor survived the mass extinction that eliminated the dinosaurs. 10,000 years ago, lions were the second most common land mammal and existed almost everywhere. They lived in Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. All the gold that has been extracted or found in the entire world would only fill the equivalent size of 4 Olympic swimming pools. There is a species of moth that has neither a mouth nor a stomach. They evolved this way because their only purpose is reproduction. They must accomplish this during the approximately 7 days of their lifespan. It is not recommended to shower during a thunderstorm because lightning energy can travel through plumbing systems with the help of water. The 7 wonders of the ancient world coexisted for only 60 years, which ended when the statue of the Colossus of Rhodes was destroyed. The living beings that have traveled the farthest into space and returned to Earth are not humans. They were 2 tortoises launched on the Zond 5 mission in 1968. They orbited the moon and returned safely. There is an electric bell at the University of Oxford in England that has been ringing continuously since 1840, powered by a battery that has never run out. They say it will eventually stop ringing, and when it does, they will dismantle the battery to see what it is made of. The eye color of reindeer changes depending on the season. During the summer, their eyes are golden, while in winter, they change to a dark blue color. This helps scatter reflected light and allows them to better adapt to snowy terrain. Lizards have a mechanism in the toes of their feet that allows them to stick and unstick whenever they want without using energy. It is a type of microscopic hair called seta that they can control. Some cultures believed that vampires had arithmomania, the compulsive need to count things. So if one chased you, you could throw rice at it and it would have to stop and count each grain one by one, which is why Count Von Count from Sesame Street teaches mathematics. The eye cavities of the Moai statues on Easter Island used to have eyes made of white coral. This was discovered after researchers assembled small broken pieces of this material that they had found and originally thought served another purpose, but they did not. The first Sony Walkman models had 2 different headphone jacks. This was done so you could share your music with other people. However, it was discontinued in later models. The reason why Lego figureheads have a hole, in addition to being useful for attaching accessories, is so air can pass through them in case a child accidentally swallows one, similar to pen caps. Tourists throw about 1 million euros into the Trevi Fountain in Rome, Italy, each year. They do this to make a wish. That money is collected, and the city uses it to provide food to people in need. The Singapore passport is the only one in the world that does not require a visa to enter North Korea, South Korea, China, or the United States. In 2025, it was ranked as the most powerful passport. In addition to the mentioned countries, its citizens can enter another 189 countries without needing a visa. Classic tube televisions confirm the Big Bang Theory. On channels with no signal, there is a noise called static, and 1% of that noise comes from cosmic microwave background radiation. It is cosmic light, or photons, from 13,800,000,000 years ago that originated with the Big Bang and are still in transit. The marshmallow plant has been used for centuries medicinally to treat things like sore throats. But in the 19th century, someone had the idea to mix it with sugar and egg whites so children could take it more easily, which turned out so well that it remained as the popular candy we consume to this day, marshmallows. The Technical University of Munich in Germany built slides that go from the 3rd floor to the ground floor to help students get to their classes faster and, at the same time, have some fun. In some countries, according to certain legends, rhinoceroses are known as the firefighters of the animal kingdom, since it is said that when they see fire, they run to put it out with their feet. However, this has not been confirmed by science, and may even be more like a joke. The movie Scream from 1996 was one of the main motivators behind the increase in popularity of caller identification machines for traditional telephones. In this movie, the villain would call his victims on the phone before chasing them. Iron Man was created by Stan Lee as a challenge he set for himself to create a hero that people would like, even though he clearly does not have the typical values that other heroes have. A British woman named Dorothy Eady claimed that after recovering from an injury at 3 years of age, she began to have memories of a past life in ancient Egypt, where she had been a priestess and servant in the court of Pharaoh Seti I. This motivated her to move to Egypt and have a prolific career as an Egyptologist. In 1996, Marvel and DC Comics published a collaboration in which Wolverine and Batman were made into a single character called Darkclaw, or Logan Wayne. There was almost a blockbuster amusement park. They had even convinced the Florida government to grant them total control of the area where it would be located, similar to what Disney World has now. But in the end, the plan was never carried out, and Blockbuster went bankrupt. The Mona Lisa, located at the Prado Museum in Madrid, Spain, was painted by one of Leonardo da Vinci's apprentices at the same time. It is from a slightly different angle than the original. This can create a stereoscopic three-dimensional effect if both are viewed at the same time. There is a giant, abandoned church in the middle of the jungle in Java, Indonesia, shaped like a chicken. Built in 1992 by a man who claimed it was inspired by a divine vision. It was built with the intention of being shaped like a dove, but everyone calls it the Chicken Church. People in Sweden can request to know the salary of any other citizen in the country. A government office is in charge of this information. They also send you a notification about who was the person who wanted to know your salary. For 20 years, the tallest hotel in the world was the Ryugyong Hotel in North Korea, with 105 floors. However, during that entire period, it was empty because its construction had not yet been completed. In the movie House of Gucci, Lady Gaga improvised the line where she says, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the House of Gucci." The scene was used to promote the movie in an attempt to make the phrase go viral. The first living beings that orbited space and successfully returned safely to planet Earth were 40 mice, 2 rats, 1 rabbit, flies, plants, and 2 dogs. They were aboard the Soviet capsule Sputnik 5, which was launched in August 1960. A man managed to capture a photo with 3 albino deer in a forest. The probability of this happening is 1 in 79 billion, due to how difficult it is to see one of these deer. When the influenza epidemic of 1899 occurred, many people began blaming telegraph wires because they noticed affected cities were connected by them and thought the virus could travel through them, which was obviously not true. In Thailand, the phrase used to greet and begin a conversation can be translated as, "Have you eaten yet?" instead of the traditional, "How are you?" used in most of the world. The classic United States Postal Service trucks made by Grumman were put into service between 1987 and 1994, and they have been so durable that it was not until 2023 that they began to be replaced by the next generation with more technology. In some areas, units with more than 34 years of use are still in operation. To film the fight scene in the movie Spider-Man: No Way Home, which takes place on the renovated Statue of Liberty, the production had to build a complete set the size of a stadium that was covered with blue screens to achieve the digital effects. In China, it has become popular for students to rent fake parents to take them to meetings with teachers to avoid the embarrassment of their real parents seeing their grades and scolding them. They hire them online, and they can charge up to $8 per hour. Roman dodecahedrons are small, hollow objects made of bronze or stone. More than 100 of these have been found in different places in Europe. It is believed they were made in the 2nd or 3rd century, and no one knows exactly what they were used for. Twin brothers named Sergio and Fika Motsoeneng cheated while running a 55.3-mile ultramarathon in South Africa in 1999. Every certain number of miles, they would change clothes in portable bathrooms to make it seem like they were the same person. Because of this, they finished among the top positions. They were discovered and disqualified after analyzing photos where they had the watch on the wrong wrist and differences in their footwear. The 10 countries that consume the most cheese in the world are in Europe, and France is in first place. On average, the French consume 55.12 pounds of cheese each year. Comedian and actor Jon Stewart proposed to his now wife through a personalized crossword puzzle in the New York Times newspaper. He did this with the help of the publication's crossword editor, Will Shortz. Dinosaurs inhabited the Earth for approximately 165 million years. This means that fossils of ancient dinosaur species already existed while the planet was still full of dinosaurs. The athlete Cristian Roberto Lopez Rodriguez from Spain broke the record for running backward 328 feet. He achieved it in just 13.7 seconds. He also holds the record for running backward in high heels for 328 feet in just 16.55 seconds. In total, he has more than 95 different Guinness records. Caretakers and all people who enter the Sundarbans Tiger Reserve in Bengal must wear masks on the back of their heads to make it appear that they are facing forward even when their backs are turned. This is because Bengal tigers only attack from behind. In Greenland, there is only one university with around 160 students. The government pays citizens to study anywhere else in the world, which is why very few remain at the local university. In the Middle Ages, it was popular to have a perpetual stew. This was a dish that was continuously cooked at all times, 24 hours a day. This prevented it from spoiling. As it emptied, they would simply add more ingredients. One of the oldest literary texts preserved today is the instructions of Shurupak, which were carved into stone more than 4,500 years ago in Mesopotamia. They contain advice and instructions on how to be a good person, and one of them says, "You should not judge when you drink beer." Humans have between 12,000 and 60,000 individual thoughts that pass through their minds each day, and 80% of these are negative. The company that manufactures most iPhone components, Foxconn, has reduced its workforce in recent years from 110,000 to 50,000 employees because robots were implemented to replace workers in some positions. A marathon is a long-distance race in which runners cover 26.10 miles. It is named after the run made by the soldier Phidippides to deliver the message that Greece had defeated the Persian army. According to the story, the messenger died shortly after arriving due to extreme exhaustion. Mickey Mouse and Disney characters from that era were designed with gloves because it was easier to animate them that way. However, Walt Disney once mentioned that the main reason was that he did not want them to have mouse hands, since they would have looked very strange, and he preferred that they appear more human. If we had to use all the batteries that currently exist in the world as energy backup without generating any additional energy, they would be depleted in just 10 minutes. Butterflies attach their eggs with a glue they produce that holds them in place without breaking. Scientists have been studying its chemical composition to create a similar adhesive, but they have not succeeded. When Emperor Julius Caesar died, it is said that he left the equivalent of 270 current dollars to each citizen of the Roman Empire. The reason why we currently know so much about the history of ancient Egypt is partly due to Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion of Egypt in 1798, when instead of only going to destroy, he brought a team of 160 scientists, astronomers, engineers, architects, and writers to document what they found. The character Aladdin in the 1992 animated movie of the same name was based on the physical features of actor Tom Cruise, and the movement of his pants was inspired by the pants worn by rapper MC Hammer. The director of the new Batman movie, Matt Reeves, mentioned in an interview that his version of Bruce Wayne, portrayed by the actor Robert Pattinson, is partly based on the Nirvana vocalist Kurt Cobain. In 2017, singer Shakira was determined to quit music after becoming a mother for the second time, but her partner at the time, soccer player Gerard Piqué, convinced her not to retire. In 2021, the singer sold the rights to her 145 songs in a multi-million-dollar deal. 1 out of every 4 construction cranes, like the ones seen when buildings are being made, is located in the city of Dubai. This is due to the large number of massive architectural projects being built there, such as the artificial islands on the coast and the multiple skyscrapers. Actor Benedict Cumberbatch spent 1 year teaching English to Buddhist monks in a Tibetan monastery in the city of Darjeeling, India, before attending university. The first computer-generated sequence used in a movie appears in a scene in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, from 1982, where a demonstration shows the terrain of a planet and other digital graphics. The studio that created this sequence was purchased by Steve Jobs after he saw it, and shortly afterward became Pixar. Silver miners in the 19th century used to leave their denim pants, or jeans, in mines when they became very worn out. These jeans, which were among the first from the Levi's brand, are now sold for up to $30,000. This has led many people to explore mines just to find these pants. The actress Charlize Theron had very little work when she decided to dedicate herself fully to acting. But everything changed one day when she had a problem at her bank and shouted at an employee. In that place was the person who would become her agent, who was amazed by the way she expressed her anger. Michael Jordan once had a clause in his contract called "Love of the Game" that allowed him to play basketball against anyone, anywhere, and at any time without consequences. At the time, this was unusual, but today, many athletes have adopted similar clauses. When the Pokemon movie was released in the year 2000, the Vatican issued a message from Pope John Paul II giving his blessing to the franchise and stating that it had no harmful effects on morality, ending all the rumors that Pikachu was demonic and those things. Some crabs have one claw larger than the other. This is natural in some species, but in other crabs, it happens because they previously lost a claw and it grew back but has not yet reached its full size. The first artificial wood-powered climate system was made 2,500 years ago in ancient Greece. It was in the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus and distributed heat from a furnace where wood was burned. The rarest Olympic medal is the Pierre de Coubertin medal, also known as the True Spirit of Sportsmanship medal. It has only been awarded 19 times since 1964 and is given to athletes who demonstrate exceptional Olympic spirit. Freshwater fish do not drink water. They only absorb it through their skin by osmosis, while saltwater fish do drink water through their mouths as well. The song "Woman" by Peter and Gordon from 1966 was written by Paul McCartney, who used the name Bernard Webb as a pseudonym. He did this to prove that his music could succeed even without his name attached. And he was right, because the song reached number 14 on the charts. In 2004, a man in China bought a VIP airline ticket that included free food at the airport before departure. However, before boarding, he would reschedule his flight. He did this almost 300 times, and when he noticed the airline was realizing his free food trick, he canceled the ticket and still received a refund. Academics in Great Britain published a study in 2005 claiming that all girls go through a stage where they hate their Barbie dolls and punish them by damaging or breaking them. This was based on a survey of 100 people. The tower where the famous Big Ben Bell is located in London, England, is leaning significantly. According to estimates, in 4,000 years, it will have the same angle that the Tower of Pisa currently has, but there is still a long time before that happens. For centuries, the gemstone amethyst was considered among the most valuable minerals on the planet, alongside diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. But in the 18th century, a very large quantity of this mineral was found in Brazil, which immediately lowered its value. Sugar was invented in India approximately 2,500 years ago, when purification and extraction techniques were established. Before this, the most popular sweetener in the world was honey. 2/3 of all missions sent to Mars since the first one in 1960 have failed in different ways. But since 2000, most have been successful, including the 3 rovers currently active on the Martian surface. In Italy, a special court was built to conduct the trial of 475 mafia members who had been arrested. This trial lasted from 1986 to 1992 and remains one of the largest trials ever conducted. The myth of the Loch Ness Monster is older than it seems. Texts more than 1,500 years old have been found describing an aquatic beast that attacked people when they went to the lake. In 2014, a monster enthusiast declared that it had already gone extinct because there had been no reported sightings for more than a year, and blamed pollution and climate change. If you leave 2 rats in an area where they have all the necessary care and no predators, they can multiply until they reach 1 million in just 18 months. That is why they are so difficult to eradicate and are considered pests in some cities. When we are nervous or anxious, we tend to overestimate how much people notice our reactions due to what is called the illusion of transparency. Simply being aware of this can increase confidence. Humans walk in circles when they get lost, unless they have an external reference point from the terrain. This was demonstrated in a television program in Germany, where blindfolded people were allowed to walk in an open field and were tracked using GPS. The number of sea turtle nests on the coasts of Florida has increased 85,000% in the last 40 years. In 1979, there were 62. But thanks to a law protecting endangered animals, by 2017, there were 53,102 nests. The director Francis Ford Coppola, known for directing the Godfather movies, once mentioned that he has made much more money in the wine business than from making movies. This is because in the 70s, he bought vineyard properties and now has his own wine brand. When portraying an American character, actor Christian Bale, who is English, conducts all press interviews and promotional appearances using an American accent, so as not to confuse the audience. Wasabi was originally added to sushi to eliminate bacteria and parasites in the fish. Currently, sanitary conditions are better and it is no longer necessary, but it remained because many people liked the taste. It has been proven that airplane seats that face backward are safer in case of deceleration or an accident. However, most airlines refuse to implement them. The technology brand Sony released a digital camera in 1997 that did not have internal memory, but it could store photos on 3.5-inch floppy disks that stored 0.0014 gigabytes. If we lose 22 pounds of body fat, of those 22 pounds, 18.5 pounds are converted directly into carbon dioxide and expelled through breathing, while the remaining 3.5 pounds are released as liquid, including sweat and tears. A few years ago, palm reading, in which people supposedly predict your fate based on the lines in your palm, became so popular in Japan that many people went to plastic surgeons to modify their natural lines and, in some way, change their destiny. Baobab trees native to Madagascar can store up to 31,700 gallons of water in their trunks. The script for the movie Avengers from 2012, written by Joss Whedon, contains a total of 21 curse words that ultimately could not be used in the film in order to maintain its rating. Otherwise, it would have had to be for adults. In reality, he did this for fun, not because he planned to include the bad words. Lay's potato chips have different names around the world. In Mexico, they are called Sabritas. In Colombia, Margarita. In Vietnam, Boca. In Great Britain, Walkers. In Australia, Smiths. In Egypt, Chipsy. And in Israel, Doppelchips. In 2004, 3 new species of wasps of the genus Carobata were discovered in Papua New Guinea, and the names given to them clearly come from the hosts of the Top Gear program, Carobata Clarkson, Hammond, and James May. In the scene where lightning strikes the clock tower in the movie Back to the Future, the lightning and conducted electricity were animated completely by hand instead of using digital effects. Since it was one of the key sequences of the film and people liked it, this technique was also used in the other 2 movies of the trilogy. Education was declared a fundamental human right in the African country of Zimbabwe in 1980 by President Robert Mugabe. Thanks to this, almost 90% of the population can read and write, one of the highest percentages in Africa. Modern soccer evolved from medieval football, where instead of being played 11 versus 11, each team was an entire village trying by any means to move or kick a ball toward the center of the opposing village. There is a bird called the honey guide that leads humans to beehives and feeds on the larvae and wax left behind after the person it guided takes the honey. New Zealand is the country where people have the most pets. 68% of all households have at least one pet. However, when counted individually, the United States has the most dogs and cats. 69 million dogs and 74 million cats. The ruler of Egypt, Cleopatra, lived closer in time to the creation of Facebook than to the construction of the Great Pyramid, which is about 4,500 years old. Cleopatra was born approximately 2,090 years ago. The ice hotel built every year in Sweden is required to install alarms and fire protection systems, despite being made mostly of water. This is due to structural regulations in the country. In 2006, the news website CNN published a list called 10 People Who Do Not Matter and included Mark Zuckerberg. They mentioned that Facebook would not be able to compete with MySpace, which at that time was at its peak. In Aldous Huxley's dystopian futuristic novel Brave New World from 1932, there is mention of manufacturing humans in jars as part of the satire of a future civilization. Although research on this was already being conducted in real life, it was not until 1978 that the first test tube baby was born. Until the 18th century, people preferred to paint the walls of their homes with reflective glossy paint because light bulbs had not yet been invented and the only way to illuminate was with candles. This paint reflected firelight and illuminated the room better. The scene in the movie The Shawshank Redemption, where Morgan Freeman throws a baseball, took 9 hours to film, during which he had to repeat the throws continuously. He did not complain once during those 9 hours, but the next day, he arrived at filming with his arm immobilized. The Voyager 1 probe is only at a distance of 20 light hours from Earth, despite having traveled at full speed for 43 years since it was launched. The Indus dolphin has eyes so small that scientists believe it can only detect the intensity and direction of light, but cannot form clear images. They navigate using a sophisticated echolocation system through high-frequency clicks that bounce off objects. It is the inspiration for submarine sonar and is considered a living fossil because it is one of the oldest dolphin species in existence. 1 tablespoon of natural maple syrup contains more calcium than the equivalent amount of milk and more potassium than a banana. In addition, it is a source of magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, and iron. In Canada, they have a national maple reserve that equals 12.35 ounces per citizen of the country. Astronaut Sunita Williams ran the first marathon in space aboard the International Space Station in 2007. She did it simultaneously with the Boston Marathon, where her sister ran. Albert Einstein once declared that the second best idea he ever had, after the theory of relativity, was adding an egg to his soup while it was cooking so he would not have to use and clean another pot. The sport of lacrosse originated in northern North America in the 12th century, where matches could last for days on enormous fields as a way to resolve disputes, sometimes with hundreds of players at the same time. It was later modified after colonization. The country that has had the most volcanoes erupt in the past 12,000 years is the United States, with 161. It is followed by Japan, with 122, and Indonesia with 121. Chile is in 5th place with 92, and Mexico in 9th place with 37. The most valuable cow of all time is Missy, who was sold in 2019 for $1.2 million. Among the characteristics that made her the most expensive is the quality and quantity of milk she produces, which is 50% more per day than an average cow. Before elevators were invented in the late 19th century and during their early years, the upper floors of buildings were reserved for workers and maintenance staff, while the lower floors were where wealthy people lived and where there was more luxury. As we know now, it is the opposite. Theaters in France in the 18th century used to hire people whose job was to applaud, become emotional, and even cry at the appropriate moments in order to influence the audience and give them a better experience, even if the play was not very good. Decades later, the same thing was done on television with laugh tracks. In the movie Beauty and the Beast from 2017, there are 2 scenes that were deleted in which the character LeFou enters a bathroom and encounters an animated toilet that used to be human. Then, at the end of the movie, when everyone returns to normal, the person who was that toilet briefly appears. He mentions that the first thing he is going to do is brush his teeth. The most expensive internet domain ever sold is business.com, which was sold for $7.5 million. It belonged to a person who had purchased it in 1996 for only $150,000. The members of the band The White Stripes, Meg White and Jack White, claimed they were siblings when they began to gain popularity. However, shortly afterward, a newspaper found their marriage certificate. White clarified that they lied because they thought people would pay more attention to their music if they did not reveal their relationship. They divorced in the year 2000. And no, they are not siblings. In 1999, NASA lost a $125 million probe that was orbiting the planet Mars due to a metric system confusion. One part of the mission staff was using pound force to measure thrust, while the navigation software expected data in pound force. Because of this, the spacecraft entered too low into the Martian atmosphere and disintegrated. According to studies that have been conducted, people with highly creative minds tend to have trouble falling asleep early and prefer to stay awake late into the night. There was an internet myth that said it is dangerous to throw rice at weddings, as tradition dictates, because doves could eat it, swell up, and explode. However, it has been proven that this is false and does not pose any danger to these birds. The Coca-Cola Company created a drink in 1993 called OK, which had unusual design and marketing strategies to capture the existentialism of Generation X. They called it OK because it was the only word more recognized than Coca-Cola in the world. Some sugars are not vegan, for an almost absurd reason. Some refineries whiten sugar using activated carbon made from cow bones. The resulting sugar does not actually contain bones, but the process prevents it from being considered vegan. This does not happen with muscovado or organic sugar. There are very small antelopes in Africa of the genus Medoqua that are known as dik-dik. They were named that because it is the sound they make when they are frightened. Dik-dik. In 2008 in Iran, They attempted to break the Guinness record for the largest sandwich in the world, measuring 0.93 miles. They had already completed it, but just when judges were about to take the official measurement, spectators began eating it, and within minutes, nothing was left, so the record could not be officially recognized. In 2011, a 99-year-old Italian man named Antonio divorced his 96-year-old wife after he found letters indicating she had cheated on him in the 1940s. It is the longest marriage that has ended in divorce, lasting 77 years. During the filming of the two Wicked movies, the lead duo Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo insisted on singing live in every take. So the production days were especially demanding because it required repeating scenes many times while holding notes, dancing, and maintaining emotional performance. For that reason, many fans have theorized that the actresses were left with negative psychological effects. Sunflowers were chosen as the international symbol for nuclear disarmament. This is because these flowers are good at decontaminating nuclear waste, since their stems and leaves absorb and store contaminants. Rabbits live around 10 years, but they can have offspring starting at 5 months of age. Additionally, their gestation period is only 1 month, and after their babies are born, they can become pregnant again immediately. This is why these animals tend to multiply very quickly. According to reports, Nintendo has accumulated so much reserve money to ensure its survival that it could lose $250 million per year and still survive until 2052. According to a study published in the journal Nature, in which 42 articles from different topics were analyzed at random, Wikipedia had an average error rate per entry of 3.86, compared to 2.92 for Encyclopedia Britannica, a difference that was smaller than expected. The word barbarian originated in ancient Greece. Its use became popular to refer to foreign people, and the Greeks thought those languages sounded like they were just saying bar, 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 which is why barbarian. The water left after cooking certain legumes, such as chickpeas or peas, is called aquafaba, and its properties are similar to egg whites. It can be used as a substitute for foods such as meringue or marshmallows. The actor Robin Williams was interested in playing the character Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies. However, he was rejected because the writer J.K. Rowling and the filmmakers only wanted British and Irish actors. The actor Sylvester Stallone wanted to use the Queen song, Another One Bites the Dust, as the main theme of the movie Rocky III, but the band did not reach an agreement with him. Since they refused, Stallone instead hired the band Survivor to create an original song. The result was Eye of the Tiger, which became one of the most iconic movie themes. Astronauts on the space station throw away their clothes when they get dirty instead of washing them, due to the cost of space transportation, which costs about $9,072 to carry 1 pound of cargo to the station. It is cheaper to send them new clothes than what it would cost to wash them. Beer bottles are usually made of brown or green glass. This is to block sunlight and light in general to preserve flavor. Before that, they were all brown, but a shortage of brown glass during World War II caused some companies to use green glass for high-quality beer. In 2005, 100 people matched the second prize of the Powerball lottery, which raised suspicions among the organizers. They even conducted an investigation. It turned out that all the winners had used numbers from fortune cookies. The smallest desert in the world measures 1.00 square miles. It is called Carcross Desert and is in Yukon, Canada. Technically, it should not be a desert because its origin is not extreme aridity, but an ancient glacial lake that left the dunes. Even so, it is a unique place where sandboarding can be done in cold weather due to its proximity to the North Pole instead of being in the heat of the Sahara. The technique of glassblowing originated about 2,000 years ago in the eastern Mediterranean, in what is now Syria. The act of inflating a bubble of molten glass using a hollow tube changed the world. It made it possible to create lightweight containers in large quantities. Soon after, it was adopted in the Roman Empire, where so many objects were made with this technique that many still exist today. The experts who maintain IMAX theater projectors have to wear protective suits similar to bulletproof vests when they need to change the special lamps. This is because these bulbs contain xenon gas at high pressure and quartz glass, and if they were to break, it would be very dangerous. The Japanese baseball team Hanshin Tigers did not win a championship for more than 18 years, and many people believed this was due to a curse from a statue of Colonel Sanders from the KFC restaurant. During the team's last championship, fans removed one of these statues and threw it into a river. Years later, authorities recovered the statue. In 2013, the company Toyota offered to donate efficiency instead of money to a community kitchen in New York. They sent their engineers to the kitchen and managed to reduce the waiting time for food from 90 minutes to just 18, thanks to the continuous improvement method, Kaizen. Transportation laws in Sweden require that all cars have their lights on at all times, including at noon. This is because at certain times of the year there is little light, and generally for safety. Other countries, such as Norway and Denmark, have similar laws. In Ecuador, there is a swing that hangs at the edge of a cliff called the Swing at the End of the World, which is attached to a treehouse, and those who ride it do not wear any protection. In addition, it is only about 1.86 miles from the crater of the Tungurahua volcano. The movie Dick Tracy from 1990 uses only 7 different colors. This color palette was chosen to evoke the style of newspaper comic strips, which had limited tones. The reason why there has not been another movie about this character is because the main actor, Warren Beatty, bought the film rights since he plans to make a sequel, and to this day it has not been made and probably never will be. In 2010, a 3-year-old boy in England was playing with his father's metal detector. He had only just learned how to use it when he found a 16th century gold pendant with an estimated value of $4 million. It was reported that the budget to produce the final season of the series, Stranger Things, was more than $480 million for the 8 episodes. If the minimum combined budgets of all 5 seasons are added together, the series cost a total of nearly $900 million in production, without including marketing costs. Its cost places it only behind The Rings of Power among the most expensive. Mustard does not require refrigeration and can last indefinitely without spoiling or developing mold thanks to its antibacterial properties and its acidity. However, this is not recommended because it can dry out, lose its flavor, or turn brown. Emperor Julius Caesar was once captured by pirates who demanded 20 talents of silver for his release. Each talent was equivalent to 55.1 pounds. It was a unit of currency. Even so, Julius Caesar advised them to ask for 50. After the ransom was paid and he was released, a fleet pursued and captured them, recovering the treasure. The official translator of the European Commission in Brussels, Ioannis Economou, can speak 32 languages fluently. The soccer team with the longest and most confusing name in the world is the Llanfair Pwth Gwyngyll Gogerechwyn Drobl Llan Tysilio Goch Football Club, founded in 1899. It plays in the 4th division of Welsh soccer and is named after the town of the same name where they play. To avoid saying the full name, they use the abbreviated version, Llanfair Pwth FC. The man with the deepest voice in the world, Tim Storms, can produce a note that is impossible for the human ear to hear, but it is registered on electronic measuring devices, and elephants can also hear it. The Paris subway trains were intentionally built to run on the right side instead of the left. Additionally, the tunnels are narrower than usual. This was done to prevent them from ever becoming part of the country's traditional railway network. The Japanese astronomer Hisako Koyama spent her entire career drawing sunspots. For more than 40 years, she made a total of 10,000 hand-drawn illustrations that were later used to study the cycles of this star. Scientists in Japan managed to create mutant cherry blossom trees by exposing them to a high-power ion beam. These trees can now bloom 4 times a year and produce many more flowers. In almost every episode of the series Adventure Time, a snail appears that sometimes is part of the story and other times is just hidden in the background. It became a tradition to find it waving. The president who lasted the shortest time in the entire world was Pedro Lascurain, who served 45 minutes as president of Mexico on February 19, 1913, because the previous president, Francisco I. Madero, submitted his forced resignation. Therefore, there had to be an interim president. At the University of Victoria in Canada, they have a course on the science of Batman, in which this superhero is used to explain the human condition and the limitations of the mind and body. If planet Earth lost its ability to rotate and slowly stopped spinning, the oceans would migrate toward the poles, where stationary gravity would be stronger, creating an equatorial megacontinent like a horizontal band of land. The oldest cave paintings ever found were made by women. Researchers discovered this when they compared the relative size of the fingers imprinted and realized that 3/4 of them belonged to women. The Perseverance rover on Mars gets its energy from a small nuclear generator, which helps charge its battery when there is no sunlight, since solar panels alone are not sufficient. In Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, Germany, there is an artificial cave with fake stalactites illuminated in a theatrical way. It was part of the whims of King Ludwig II, who ordered this castle to be built in the 19th century, which later served as inspiration for the Disney castle. In Finland, 9 out of 10 plastic beverage bottles and other plastic bottles are returned to be reused or recycled, and all glass bottles are also recycled. It is the leading country in these types of practices. The Antarctic icefish has no scales and is almost transparent. Instead of having red blood cells to transport oxygen, the oxygen dissolves and diffuses directly into its plasma from the nearly freezing water where it lives, thanks to its large gills and thin skin. It is one of the strangest fish. There is a tribute band to Black Sabbath that performs covers of their songs dressed as McDonald's mascots, and they change the lyrics so they talk about fast food. They're called Mac Sabbath, and they once met the original Black Sabbath vocalist Ozzy Osbourne, and it seems that he liked it. The most powerful controlled sound created by humans is the low-frequency military sonar system of submarines, which serves as a radar underwater. It can reach 215 decibels. Because sound waves travel differently in water than in air, the figures cannot be compared. But this noise often disorients whales and other animals that depend on sound to avoid getting lost. There is no natural food that is blue. Blueberries and other foods that appear blue are actually just different shades of purple. When rapper Eminem was a child, he wanted to become a comic book artist. Today, he has a very large collection and even has his own comic book. In 2009, Marvel released a special edition where he appears as a character alongside the Punisher. The time when the most people in the world are sleeping is at 4 in the afternoon Central Mexico time, because it coincides with nighttime in regions of Asia where a larger portion of the population lives. The largest KFC restaurant in the world is in the city of Baku in Azerbaijan, inside a train station built in 1926, part of a Soviet Union railway network. Before becoming the restaurant, the building was abandoned, and KFC invested €3 million in its restoration. If you use headphones for 1 hour, the amount of bacteria in your ears can increase up to 700 times. This is due to the lack of ventilation, which promotes moisture and increased temperature, which are ideal conditions for microorganisms. The popular belly dance is traditionally performed by both women and men at family gatherings and celebrations in some countries. The two-piece costume commonly associated with it was popularized by Hollywood and later adapted by nightclub dancers in Egypt to attract tourists. Being hungry causes serotonin levels to drop, which creates a whirlwind of emotions including anxiety, stress, and anger. In the 60s, the African country of Zambia had a space program. It consisted of a physics teacher, a teenager, and a few volunteers who set going to Mars as their goal. However, everything had to be canceled due to lack of funding. In 1968, an orangutan named Fu Manchu escaped many times from his enclosure at a zoo in the United States. No one knew how he did it until they discovered that he managed to open the lock with a piece of wire as if it were a key. He did it many times without being detected because, when his caretaker watched him, he hid the wire in his mouth. The series El Chavo del Ocho was broadcast in Italy in the early 1980s under the name Cecco della Botte, and again at the end of the decade with a different dub called Una autentica peste. In the second version, the voice of La Cilindrina is performed by Monica Ward, who is also the voice of Lisa in The Simpsons in Italian. There are some episodes of El Chavo that only exist with Italian and Brazilian Portuguese dubbing because the original Spanish versions were lost at some point. The pickle brand Vlasic created a mascot in 1974 to promote its products, which is a stork. They created it specifically to direct their advertising toward pregnant women who were craving pickles. In Austria, in 2006, a postage stamp was released that contained a small fragment of real meteorite dust, 0.01 ounces in each one. This was the first time something like this had been done. The average human attention span, when fully focused on a task, has been reduced to almost half since the year 2000, when it was 12 seconds. Currently, it is only 8 seconds, according to a study conducted by Microsoft in 2015. In 2010, a World Fireworks Championship was held, in which international teams competed to create the best 25-minute routine with the music of their choice. And the winner was France. In the first Star Wars movie, during the famous cantina scene, among the characters present there is a demon that looks like it does not belong. This is because George Lucas wanted more characters in the scene, so they had to obtain more costumes. And this one belonged to effects artist Rick Baker, who was going to use it for another movie that was never made. When the television show That 70s Show aired, the musician Alex Chilton, who composed the official theme of the show, would receive $70 in royalties every time an episode aired. In 1969, an SR-71 Blackbird aircraft, which at the time was the most advanced and cost $34 million, disintegrated mid-flight during a test. This happened because a piece of insulating tape measuring 1.97 inches had been attached, compromising its aerodynamic resistance. In France, there is a law that prohibits bakeries from calling themselves bakeries if they do not make their products entirely from scratch. If they sell bread that was baked elsewhere, they cannot legally call themselves that. One of the creators of the video game Half-Life, Mark Laidlaw, once stated that if a Half-Life movie were ever made, his preferred director to make it would be Guillermo del Toro. Plans to make an adaptation have been reported on different occasions, but did not lead to anything concrete. The animated music video of Bad Bunny's song Te Deseo Lo Mejor was the first time a completely Spanish production of The Simpsons was made in which the mouth movements match what is being said. The Latin American voice actors participated, Humberto Vélez and Claudia Mota, the original voices of Homer and Marge, who returned for season 32 of the series. The Stanley Hotel, which inspired writer Stephen King to write the novel The Shining, has a channel available to all guests that continuously plays Stanley Kubrick's movie based on the novel. It is Channel 42. The director, Alfred Hitchcock, had the habit of not filming things unless they were absolutely necessary, unlike the style of most other directors who prefer to film scenes many times and then cut to choose the best one. For example, in Hitchcock's classic movie North by Northwest, only 5 seconds of film were cut. Glitter was created in 1934, when a man was trying to find the best way to get rid of excess plastic he had. He tried crushing it and then pulverizing it into very small pieces, but when he did that, he realized they had reflections that made it look like it was shining. For people who do not consider themselves extroverted or introverted, there is the term ambivert, which refers to someone who feels comfortable in social interactions, but also enjoys and needs time alone. Most of the different cultures in the world have myths related to levitation, mainly linked to religion as a confirmation of divinity. For example, gurus who levitate after practicing meditation. So far, there is no scientific evidence that something like this can occur, but it is interesting that these stories have been so persistent across different cultures. When the French engineer Louis Réard created the bikini in 1946, no model agreed to wear it to present it to the world, since they considered it too revealing. He had to hire a woman who danced at a nightclub to model it. During the premiere weekend of the 4th season of the series Stranger Things, the show broke the record for the most watched time on Netflix, with a total of 287 million hours combined. Previously, this record belonged to the 2nd season of Bridgerton, with 193 million hours. The influencer who made the most liked video of all time on TikTok so far, Bella Porch, grew up in the Philippines until she was 13 years old, when she moved to the United States and joined the Navy, where she served for some time before making her famous viral video in 2020. Research is being conducted on termites and how we could use them to produce energy. They can produce 0.53 gallons of hydrogen by consuming the equivalent of a single sheet of paper. This makes them one of the most efficient bioreactors on the planet. If you catch a sturgeon in the United Kingdom, it automatically belongs to the royal family. This is due to a decree signed centuries ago. These fish are currently threatened by commercialization because they are the source of the most expensive variety of caviar. Due to wind currents on the planet, sand from the Sahara Desert is transported to the Amazon rainforest, which replenishes it with minerals and contributes to plant fertilization. Lungfish, or dipnoi fish, are the only fish that currently exist that, in addition to gills, have lungs to breathe. This makes them the fish most similar and most closely related to humans. The official Twitter account of Sweden is managed by ordinary citizens, who are usually given about 1 week depending on how well their tweets are received. They only need to read a general guide of rules they must follow. Betty Boop first appeared in color in a short film from 1934 that was made using the 2-strip Cinecolor process because Walt Disney had exclusive rights to the new 3-strip Technicolor process. To take advantage of the use of color, Betty Boop's hair is red and her eyes are green, an appearance that contrasts with her classic black hair. The billionaire John Paul Getty had a coin-operated telephone in his mansion for his guests to use if they wanted to make calls, so he would not have to pay for them. In Tim Burton's movie Beetlejuice, Jack Skellington can be seen briefly as part of Beetlejuice's carnival hat during one of his transformations. The movie The Nightmare Before Christmas would not be released until 5 years later, in 1993. McDonald's Canada has a YouTube channel where they posted the secret recipes for making their products. They even have a video showing how to make the sauce for the popular Big Mac hamburger. The writer H.P. Lovecraft wrote nearly 100,000 letters during his lifetime, and many of these are preserved in archival collections. He is estimated to be one of the people who wrote the most letters in all of history. The writer Voltaire is also among the top. With the rise of electronic mail, the number of written letters decreased considerably. 50,000 years ago, there were ducks the size of a modern horse, called dromornithids, that lived in Australia, but they went extinct. Recently, it was discovered that they were actually distant relatives of modern birds, such as ducks and geese. Soldiers usually break their coordinated marching while crossing a bridge. This is because in 1831, British soldiers were marching, and the amplified vibrations caused the bridge they were crossing to collapse. 90% of all Botox produced on the planet for cosmetic facial corrections comes from a single factory located in Ireland. Sterling silver objects, a designation used to know if something is truly made of silver, are not actually 100% silver. A small amount of copper is added because pure silver is very soft and would bend very easily. Bloodhounds are the type of dog with the most sensitive sense of smell. Their sensitivity is so great that they receive 10 times more neural information in their brain from their nose than humans receive from their eyes. Schools that do not have strict playground rules generally have much less bullying and fewer problems among students. It is believed this is because during break time, they do not have to think about rules, which contributes to reduced stress and better concentration during classes. Tic Tac candies are named after the sound the container makes every time it is opened and closed. Before 1970, they already existed, but were simply called refreshing mints. Astronomers and geologists have discovered evidence that the planet Mars once had massive tsunamis, with waves that could reach more than 328.08 feet in height. All species that currently exist in the world are descendants of the 4% of species that survived the Great Permian-Triassic extinction, which occurred 248 million years ago. The citadel of Machu Picchu in Peru was built only 50 years before Europeans arrived in the Americas. Nintendo cartridges with demo labels, incomplete prototypes, or marked not for resale are sought after by collectors because of their rarity. They were internal materials for stores, magazines, or conventions such as E3. Incomplete levels and discarded mechanics can be worth up to thousands of dollars and are considered pieces of digital archaeology. In Japan, there is a National Tom Cruise Day on October 10th. It has been celebrated since 2006 and was established by the country's holiday association as gratitude for being the Hollywood actor who has visited Japan the most times. In Ethiopia, a different calendar is used compared to other regions of the world, which is several years behind. Currently, in 2022, Ethiopia is in the year 2014. This is because they use the Coptic calendar instead of the Gregorian calendar. The word oía is the only word in Spanish that has 3 syllables and 3 letters. It is the imperfect past tense conjugation of the verb oír, and each syllable is a vowel. Since it is a grave word, its stressed syllable is on the second letter. The airport considered the most difficult to land at for a pilot is Paro Airport, located in Bhutan in the Himalayan mountains. Currently, fewer than 20 pilots in the world are certified to be able to land at that airport. During the filming of the movie Resident Evil Afterlife, a platform with actors collapsed, causing injuries to 16 of them, and when medical services arrived, they had trouble distinguishing who was actually injured because they were dressed as zombies. The Pokemon Kadabra stopped appearing in the cards of this popular franchise due to a lawsuit filed by the illusionist Uri Geller, since the Japanese name of this Pokemon is Yungader and is clearly based on him because it also bends a spoon. But after 20 years, in 2020, they reached an agreement and Kadabra returned. In 1807, Napoleon invaded Portugal. forcing the entire royal family to flee to Brazil, which at that time was a colony. This allowed them to continue operating the Portuguese Empire from Rio de Janeiro, which became the capital of Portugal for 13 years. It is the only time that the capital of an empire has been located in one of its colonies. Kaby Lame, known for the videos in which she makes fun of life hacks, is the most followed Italian TikToker. Despite that, and having lived almost his entire life in Italy, he does not have an Italian passport or citizenship due to the strict immigration laws in the country. He was born in Senegal, but moved with his parents to Italy when he was 1 year old. The reason why the trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard was televised and became a trend, unlike other important trials, is because in the United States, it is strictly prohibited to record in federal court, and this viral trial took place in a local court, specifically in the state of Virginia. In federal cases, only official transcripts and courtroom sketches can be seen. The singer and songwriter Grimes has mentioned that her music videos and album covers are influenced by anime and manga. One of her recent songs, Shinigami Eyes, refers to the creatures that appear in the series Death Note. In turn, they are an important part of Japanese folklore. Shinigami means god of death. An ostrich egg contains more than 2,000 calories and can take up to 2 hours to cook. But even though they are the largest eggs in the world, when compared to the size of the bird, they could be considered small. Compared to body size, the largest egg belongs to the kiwi, which can weigh up to 25% of its body mass. In comparison, if humans were like kiwis, a 132-pound person would lay a 33-pound egg. But fortunately, we are not kiwis. Approximately 1 out of every 10 people in China has the last name Wang, which means king. It is the most common last name in the country. Second place is Li, followed by Zhang. When the video game Castlevania was adapted for release in North America, Nintendo of America had to remove all religious symbols due to censorship policies. They removed most of the Christian crosses that appeared in the game, which was difficult because it is a game about vampires, and there was even a weapon shaped like a cross. There is only one country in the world whose entire territory is located above 3,280.84 feet above sea level. It is Lesotho. It has no coastline and is completely surrounded by South Africa. One of the wines served in the restaurant in the movie Ratatouille is the Lacerte brand. This is because of John Laserte, Pixar's executive producer. However, this is not fictional. This wine brand really exists and belongs to him and his family. Plastic flamingos began to be manufactured in 1957 and immediately became one of the favorite garden decorations. So much so that a few decades later, the number of plastic flamingos far exceeded the number of real flamingos. For every real flamingo, there are 7 plastic ones. Scientists played rock music to termites in a scientific study and discovered that they ate wood faster. The music accelerated them, but it also proved dangerous for the colony because they neglected other termite duties such as feeding other members of the colony who needed it. The first time the musician David Bowie appeared on television was in 1964, but he did not present his music. Instead, he was interviewed on a BBC program because he had just founded the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Long-Haired Men. The Parliament of the United Kingdom has a rock band whose members are Members of Parliament, or MPs, and for that reason, they named it MP4. They were the first musicians to perform at the Palace of Westminster in the 900 years since it was built. In 1928, Henry Ford ordered the construction of a complete city in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil and called it Fordlandia. It was completely focused on producing rubber due to the high demand for making tires for his cars. It was later abandoned for a long time, but currently, around 3,000 people live in that place. Canada did not plan to send a hockey team to the 1948 Olympic Games, so they sent Air Force personnel to represent the country. But surprisingly, they were so good that they won the gold medal. When the movie Ratatouille was released in 2007, it became the 4th highest grossing premiere in France. The attention to detail and accuracy of the scenes where food was prepared were celebrated by audiences. The word hurricane has different origins. According to the Mayan book Popol Vuh, it means heart of the sky and is related to the storm god. It is also related to deities in the Taíno language of the Antilles and in Quechua dialects of South America. The oldest video game record that has not yet been beaten was set by Todd Rogers in the Atari 2600 game Dragster in 1982, which he completed in 5.51 seconds. It even surpassed the theoretical limit established by the programmers of 5.54 seconds. Composer Gioacchino Rossini had to write a section of the opera, Ciro and Babylon, specifically so that a singer would only have to sing a single note the entire time. This was because he realized she sang out of tune. In the end, the performance received ovations and applause. When we sneeze, air can be expelled from the mouth at more than 93.21 miles per hour, a speed that could be considered a Category 2 hurricane according to the Saffir-Simpson scale. The rights to make the movie based on the novel The Wolf of Wall Street were purchased in 2007 by Warner and Leonardo DiCaprio. They won the negotiations over Paramount Pictures and Brad Pitt, who were also interested in making the movie. Camels can drink 52.83 gallons of water in just 3 minutes. But contrary to what is believed, they do not store water in their humps exactly as it is. In reality, their humps contain fat, which is stored so they can survive longer without eating. Mirrors reflect slightly more green light than other colors due to the material they are made from. This causes them to appear greenish from certain angles, such as when two mirrors reflect each other. The 2012 movie Skyfall revived the classic shaving razor industry because they were used in a scene. One company that manufactures them went from producing 8,000 per year to receiving orders for more than 100,000 razors. When advertisements for the iPhone X were released, claiming that the phone could take studio-quality photos, the Advertising Regulatory Commission in the United Kingdom received many complaints that it was misleading advertising. However, they were rejected because there is no technical definition of studio-quality photos, and it is subjective. The boxing match between Floyd Mayweather and the influencer Logan Paul that lasted approximately half an hour generated a total of $50 million in direct revenue from pay-per-view, not including sponsorship revenue. Mayweather received half of the pay-per-view money plus a salary of $10 million. The headpiece worn by the character Scarlet Witch in comics and now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not a crown or helmet. It is called a wimple, a garment typically used to cover the hair that was worn by married women in medieval Europe and is still worn today by some Muslim women and nuns. After the character Ben Wyatt from the series Parks and Recreation created a fictional board game called Cones of Dunshire, the company that created the popular game Catan made a real version and sold it as a limited edition. On the Golden Gate Bridge, there is a truck that can add a lane to the flow of traffic in whichever direction it is needed. It is called a zipper system because it resembles a clothing zipper. Hidden curiosities in video games, movies, or any entertainment media are called Easter eggs. In the video game Grand Theft Auto Vice City, one of the Easter eggs is literally an Easter egg placed there by the developers. Before catching fire in 1937, the Hindenburg airship had already completed 17 transatlantic trips without incident. Despite this, after the accident, the era of airships ended abruptly because people no longer considered them safe. The name of the city Gotham in the Batman universe comes from a nickname given to New York City, first mentioned by the writer Washington Irving in 1807. It was not meant kindly, since Gotham literally means goat town in Old English. Beethoven had a technique to hear his piano after he became deaf. He discovered that if he attached a piece of metal to the piano and then bit it, the vibrations would transfer to his inner ear through his bones. This is called bone conduction. Beethoven realized he was beginning to have hearing problems at 28 years old, and by 45, he could no longer hear. In Sri Lanka, there is a tradition in which children must throw their baby teeth to the top of a tree when they see a squirrel. They throw them with the condition that the squirrel will later bring them a new tooth. It is something similar to the tooth fairy. Charles Darwin married his cousin Emma Wedgwood. They had 10 children, but 3 of them died due to various health issues. This helped him understand how offspring of genetically similar parents could have health effects, contributing to the theory of evolution he later published. The Chacoan peccary is an animal that was believed to be extinct. It was known only from fossil studies discovered since 1930 until live specimens were found in Argentina and Paraguay in 1971. In 1998, Marvel offered Sony the film rights to almost all its characters for only $25 million, but the offer was rejected. They only bought the rights to Spider-Man for $10 million because they believed people would only be interested in a movie about this superhero. The worst deal of all time. In the 60s, an experiment was conducted in which engineers without any nuclear training were tasked with assembling an atomic bomb using only documents available to the general public, and to their surprise, they succeeded. To become a police officer in Norway, 3 years of study and training at a university are required, where graduates receive a degree in police studies. The word robot was first used in the play RUR in 1920 and comes from a term meaning forced labor or servant in Old Slavic and Czech. Scientists placed a type of fungus on a map of the city of Tokyo where they put food representing urban centers. After one day, the fungus had already spread and reached the food points, forming almost an identical copy of the city's subway system, which had been designed in the most efficient way possible. There is evidence that approximately every 1,000 years, giant tsunamis occur in Switzerland's freshwater lakes due to landslides. The last of these events occurred in 1601. The greatest hockey player of all time, Wayne Gretzky, was so dominant that many fantasy hockey leagues began separating his statistics into two categories, goals and assists, while all other players had them combined. The name of the sepia color style in photographs comes directly from the name of cuttlefish, which are the mollusks from which the ink was originally extracted to color them. The actor Vin Diesel is a fan of the popular game Dungeons & Dragons. He has played it for more than 37 years, and even collaborated on a book about its history. Hawaii is the most geographically isolated place in the world. More than 90% of its native land, plant, and animal species are unique to the islands. This level of endemism exceeds even that of the Galapagos Islands. The absence of gravity makes it impossible to know if your bladder is full. This is because the receptor nerves do not feel the weight of the liquid. For this reason, astronauts go to the bathroom every 2 hours on a scheduled basis. Until 2003, Thomas Edison was considered the most prolific inventor of all time. However, he was surpassed by Japanese inventor Shunpei Yamazaki, whose inventions include the thin conductive layer that makes liquid crystal displays, or LCD screens, possible. The musician Billy Joel has the habit of randomly giving front-row tickets at his concerts to people who have tickets farther back. He does this so there are real fans in front, and not only people with a lot of money. Owls have special feathers on their wings that allow them to fly almost silently, helping them avoid detection. Some owls that mainly eat fish do not have this adaptation because fish cannot hear. In 2013, at one of the Tokyo subway stations, a section of track was changed from surface level to underground without interrupting service for a single day. This was accomplished through perfectly planned work carried out during the 4 hours when the system normally closes at night, and by the next morning, it was already in operation. The video game Grand Theft Auto was originally going to be a racing game called Race and Chase. However, during testing, there was a bug that caused police cars to crash into the main car. This bug was so popular in testing that they decided to change the concept, and that is how this popular franchise was born. The animated series Ed, Edd and Eddy is the longest-running Cartoon Network series. It aired for 10 years, from 1999 to 2009, and concluded with a television movie. In the 1920s, there were people who opposed including crossword puzzles in newspapers because they believed they could contribute to illiteracy. Before 2012, 1% of the entire population of Greenland lived in a single apartment building called Block P, which was later demolished. To protect the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, Xbox Kinect sensors were used for a time by South Korea, since traditional sensors sometimes detected false signals such as falling leaves. The ancient history of Sweden is largely unknown because there are no written records from before the 12th century in that country. According to history books, there is no exact date that can be established as the founding of the Kingdom of Sweden. Actor Rowan Atkinson, known for playing Mr. Bean and recently for starring in the Netflix series Man vs. Bee, is not widely known to have a master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Oxford. Among the components used to build the first smartphones and current components, there are approximately 250,000 registered patents. 100 years ago, there were more women in important positions in Hollywood than today. Half of all movies made between 1911 and 1925 were written by women. The name of the Six Flags amusement parks refers to the 6 different nations that have governed Texas at some point: Spain, France, Mexico, the Republic of Texas, the United States, and the Confederate States. There are more people who speak English in countries such as Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands than in the entire country of Canada, where it is one of the official languages. Actor Arnold Schwarzenegger was so determined to exercise when he was young that he often broke into local gyms during weekends when they were closed. There are nearly 50,000 kanji characters in the Japanese writing system. However, students only need to learn 2,136 to read properly. There was a time during the Han Dynasty in China when unmarried women were charged a special tax. In contrast, women who had children received tax reductions for 3 years. Bees can control the thickness and clarity of their honey by beating their wings together at ventilation points in their hive at different rhythms to control water evaporation. Before the First World War, German was the second most spoken language in the United States after English, and was also popular in much of the world. But this changed when the war happened. Frozen milk can be stored for a long time, even years, without spoiling. Harvard University has a fund of $53 billion. That is more than the gross domestic product of countries such as Tunisia or Venezuela. Even so, on average, a degree at this university costs around $50,000 per year. The role of vultures in nature is so important that they evolved independently in 2 isolated regions of the planet into their current forms, despite not being related. This means that vultures from the American continent do not share a common ancestor with those from other continents, despite being almost identical. The city of Venice was originally built on foundations made of tree logs, which were the best method available at the time, about 1,200 years ago. Those foundations are what still support almost the entire city center today. At the Disney theme park, Epcot, they developed a special perfume that smells like snowy Nordic mountains. In addition to selling it, they spray it daily in the park area representing Norway. The largest physical movement of money occurred during the Second World War. 186,332 gold bars and more than 200 tons of gold were transported from the United Kingdom to Canada. The entire process was completed without losing a single coin or gram. In Canada, engineers receive an iron ring to remind them of humility. This is in memory of a bridge that collapsed twice due to poor calculations and that was made of iron. The word vaccine comes from the Latin root for cow. This is due to the discovery that smallpox could be prevented in people inoculated with cowpox, a much less harmful variant. Charles Darwin predicted the existence of a type of moth in Madagascar 45 years before it was first seen, and 150 years before it was studied and published scientifically. Android was originally developed to be an operating system for digital cameras. However, shortly afterward, it was adapted for phones, and currently, it is the most used operating system on the entire planet. The cartoon Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote was created by animator Chuck Jones as a parody and even a mockery of cartoons like Tom and Jerry that were popular at the time, which is why it had absurd tones and impossible physics. Despite this, most people did not notice the irony, and it became extremely popular. The Prince of Johor in Malaysia, Tunku Ismail, once greeted women while wearing toy Hulk gloves. He did this as a way to mock strict religious codes that prevented him from shaking hands with women without gloves. The sounds made by lizards change when they inhale helium gas, just like humans. This indicates that reptiles have vocal mechanisms similar to ours. The oldest ham in the world has 120 years of aging and is said to still be edible, but no one has dared to try it. The Mexican Constitution of 1917 was the first official document in the world to establish that education is a basic right for all people. Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, who recently completed 70 years of reign, never gave a press conference, never voted in an election, or expressed a personal opinion publicly. This is a royal tradition, but she could break it if she wanted. It is impossible to taste food without saliva. This is because the chemicals in food must first dissolve. Once they mix with liquid, they can be detected by the taste buds. According to scientific studies, not sleeping enough or sleeping at irregular times can directly contribute to unhealthy eating habits, such as consuming junk food. This is due to reduced self-control. The high-speed railway system of Japan, the Shinkansen, despite more than 50 years of operation, has never had an accident in which anyone was injured. Its trains can reach speeds of up to 223.69 miles per hour. In ancient times, Greeks did not wear pants because they considered them ridiculous, according to texts from the era. Romans also did not wear pants because they viewed them as clothing of uncivilized people. only barbarians wore pants. It has been observed that male puppies intentionally let female puppies win when they are playing, despite having greater physical strength. They do this to encourage them to play more. Some real pirates wore eye patches, but not for style. It allowed them to quickly adapt between bright light on deck and darkness below the ship. One eye remained adjusted to darkness at all times. Sulfur contains the three primary colors. In its solid state, it is yellow. In its liquid state, it is red. And when it burns, it is blue. In the town of Churchill, in the Manitoba region of Canada, it is illegal to lock your car in case someone needs to use it for shelter from an attack by one of the 900 polar bears that live nearby. The actor Charles Chaplin was one of Walt Disney's inspirations for creating the character Mickey Mouse. Later, Chaplin himself helped the studio negotiate the budget and distribute the movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the company's first major success. Before the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance, 75% of all the books that had been made in the world were written in Chinese. Before joining the original lineup of Guns N' Roses, guitarist Slash auditioned to join the band Poison, but decided to reject them when they told him he had to wear makeup. The Italian poet and writer Dante Alighieri was exiled from the city of Florence in the year 1300 on charges of corruption. He could be sentenced if he returned. He wrote his great works, including The Divine Comedy, in exile. In June 2008, almost 700 years after his death, the city of Florence pardoned him. To create the interior of the Millennium Falcon in the movie Star Wars, set designers bought airplane parts from a scrapyard, divided them, and attached them together. This was much cheaper than building everything from scratch. During the 60s, NASA astronauts could have any Corvette car they wanted for only $1. All of this as a reward for risking their lives launching into space. And those things. When wolf packs howl together, they do so in different tones to create harmonies, making them sound like there are more wolves and helping drive away threats from their territory. The fortune of Stanford University professor David Cheriton, estimated at $11 billion, was obtained thanks to the investments he made in his students' ideas, mainly because he was the first investor in Google. The Eiffel Tower was close to being demolished in 1909 because it was considered useless and many people thought it was ugly, but it was saved when it was converted into a radio antenna capable of transmitting signals to the other side of the world. There was an accessory for Super Nintendo that was a stationary bicycle that could be used together with some games. Currently, it is a collector's item that can be valued at a lot of money, since few units were manufactured. In 1973, Concorde pilots chased a solar eclipse at a speed of 1,553 miles per hour. This allowed them to extend their view of the eclipse from 7 minutes to 74 minutes. After the annual Tomatina festival takes place in the town of Buñol in Valencia, Spain, the city streets are left completely clean, thanks to the acidity of the tomatoes, which disinfects and cleans surfaces. The Curiosity rover, which was sent to Mars before the current Perseverance, has a secret message in its wheels that it leaves marked on the Martian surface. It is written in Morse code, and when interpreted, it spells the initials JPL from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory that helped develop it. South Korea has used giant speakers pointed toward North Korea in the demilitarized zone to play K-pop songs. This was used as a form of psychological propaganda. The first album of the band, Electric Light Orchestra, was released in the United States with the title No Answer. This happened due to a misunderstanding when a record company assistant tried to call to ask for the name, and when no one answered, she simply wrote a note that said, "No answer." Unlike all other parts of the body, the cornea does not receive the oxygen it needs from the blood. It obtains it directly from the air. The youngest person to appear old. It was the daughter of rapper Jay-Z, Blue Ivy Carter, whose crying is recorded at the end of the song Glory, which is why she appears in the credits. On average, intelligence quotient scores have declined worldwide in recent decades. However, this statistic is due to the fact that people considered more intelligent are having fewer children. The movie Terminator 2 won an Academy Award. No other sequel has won an Academy Award after the first installment was not even nominated. To be able to drive a car in Singapore, you must obtain a certificate of ownership that is usually acquired through an auction, so its price varies. When demand is high, the certificate can cost more than the car itself. A fish trap was discovered with the help of a satellite image from Google Earth that had been used for fishing more than 1,000 years ago along the coasts of Great Britain. The bakery that caused the Great Fire of London in 1666, in which the homes of more than 70,000 residents were destroyed, issued a public apology, but it did so in 1986. In Japan, there are robot factories that manufacture robots capable of operating for up to 30 days without human supervision. They are known as lights-out factories because they can function in complete darkness. The Reynolds Building in North Carolina, United States, built in 1929, was used as design inspiration for the Empire State Building 2 years later. It is said that every year, employees of the Empire State Building send a Father's Day card to the Reynolds Building as a tribute. Using a paper towel to dry your hands after washing them reduces bacteria by 40%, while using an air dryer increases bacteria by 220%. This is because bacteria grow faster in warm and humid environments. In dreams, your mind cannot do certain things, including invent faces. That is why every person who appears in your dreams is someone you have seen before somewhere, and your brain stored them even unconsciously. In a campaign for the release of the video game Mass Effect 3, the company Electronic Arts launched copies of the game into space using weather balloons equipped with GPS signals. Shortly afterward, fans managed to track the balloons and obtain copies of the game before its official release. The director George Miller asked his wife Margaret Sixel to edit his movie Mad Max Fury Road, even though she had never worked with action scenes before. He mentioned that if he had let the usual editors do it, it would have looked like any other action movie. Because of this, Margaret won the Academy Award for Film Editing. There is a hammer museum in Haines, Alaska, where there are more than 1,400 different hammers and other tools that were made from prehistoric times to modern industrial-era pieces. Pygmy goats are more intelligent than commonly believed. They are among the few animals that have object permanence ability. This means they can remember and know that an object exists even if they do not see it or smell it, something that humans do not even have during the first months of life. Until 1999, the American Express Black Card was only a myth. It did not actually exist. However, it attracted so much attention that they created a real, ultra-exclusive black card for millionaires that still exists today, and other banks adopted the concept shortly afterward. There is a United Nations foundation called Block by Block that uses the video game Minecraft to visualize improvements that could be made in urban areas that have been neglected due to different situations. If a black hole with the same mass as the Sun formed in its place, Earth and the other planets in the solar system would not be absorbed. They would continue in the same orbit. The black hole would have to be larger to destroy Earth. Bumblebees perform warm-up exercises before flying when it is very cold or during winter. This is so they do not experience cramps during flight. The company Lenovo is partly owned by the government of China, and its computers may have secret, unrestricted access for the company. Because of this, many research agencies in the world do not use them. There is a heavy metal band made of robots called Compressor Head. It was created in 2013 in Berlin, Germany. The robots really play their instruments. The drummer has 4 arms, and the guitarist has 78 fingers. Together, they weigh 3,307 pounds. The city with the largest population where French is spoken is not Paris or Montreal. It is Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where more than 10 million people live. In the movie Black Swan, when the main character had to perform complex dance steps, they were filmed with a professional dancer, and in post-production, Natalie Portman's head was added. The effect turned out so well that it is very difficult to distinguish when it is her entirely or only her head attached. Wrestlers Jeff Hardy and Mick Foley have an agreement with science. They agreed to donate their brains to help with research on concussions in entertainment and impact sports. There are more than 30 stories of civilizations around the world that describe a supposed Great Flood. This dates back to Bronze Age and Neolithic cultures. Practically every ancient civilization had its own version. One of the main causes of divorce among older couples in Japan is retired husband syndrome, described by doctors as the period when wives begin to experience stress symptoms because they must take care of their newly retired husband who has nothing to do. In the classic Nintendo video game Punch-Out!, the character you control, named Little Mac, had to be small on purpose so he would not take up too much space on the screen, and the opponents could be observed. His name is a play on words that references the famous Big Mac hamburger. In the original He-Man cartoon from the 1980s, He-Man was not allowed to use his sword or any other weapon. He also could not punch or kick his enemies. This was due to a law that prevented children's programs from showing violence. Instead, he only made plans to defeat his enemies using intelligence. The first country to ban disposable plastic bags was Rwanda on the African continent. This law was implemented in 2008, and since then, many other countries have followed the example. The actor Danny DeVito voiced the Lorax in the movie from 2012 in 6 different languages. The singer Taylor Swift donated all her earnings from her Wildest Dreams video, in which she appears alongside different wild animals, to the African Wildlife Conservation Foundation. In 2015, a man was arrested in Canada when he tied more than 100 helium balloons to a lawn chair and flew over the city of Calgary. The country with the most 7-Eleven stores is Japan, with more than 20,000, more than double the number in the United States, the country of origin of this chain. In Mexico, there are around 1,800 locations. Artist Salvador Dalí was obsessed with cauliflowers. He drove around Paris with his car filled with cauliflowers and gave them to people. Later, he explained to a journalist that his fascination was due to the logarithmic curve and fractal patterns of cauliflowers. The blood pressure regulation systems in the necks of giraffes inspired a new type of anti-G suit that allowed an airplane pilot to withstand 9G long enough to complete a Rubik cube while speaking normally. The human body cannot withstand more than 5G without losing consciousness. The first use of the acronym OMG, oh my God, was recorded in a letter sent in 1917 to United Kingdom politician Winston Churchill, when a retired admiral sent him his opinion about news of military movements. The actor Daniel Craig, who portrayed James Bond in 5 movies, has a clause in his contract that states he can take any Aston Martin car he wants from any dealership for free for life. In Picasso's 1932 painting, The Reading, a woman can be seen resting while holding a book. This painting led to the separation of the painter's marriage after his wife saw the artwork at an exhibition and realized she did not resemble the woman depicted. In the 60s, the company General Electric designed a system for an astronaut to fall from space to Earth without being harmed in case of an emergency. It consisted of a plastic bag filled with polyurethane foam, a small engine, and a parachute. Everything fit inside a backpack. A prototype was made, but NASA was not interested. When director Steven Spielberg was 17 years old, he directed and produced a film called Firelight with a budget of $500. It was shown in a local theater to 500 people, where tickets cost $1. However, one person paid $2. This made it the director's first box office success, and he ended up with a profit of $1. The human eye can distinguish the light of a lit candle at a distance of up to 29.83 miles. But it must be on a night with little moonlight and in an environment without light pollution. There are studies with evidence that once the influenza virus infects someone, it can influence the person and cause them to be more social in order to increase its chances of spreading. There was a war that lasted 335 years between the Dutch and the Isles of Scilly that had no consequences because the Dutch had forgotten about it. It was not until 1986 that they signed a peace treaty after being contacted by a historian from the islands. Otherwise, they would have never realized it. Spider-Man had more lines of dialogue in the movie Captain America: Civil War than Superman in the movie Batman v Superman. Even though Spider-Man only appeared briefly as a secondary character, he had 47 lines compared to 43 lines. 684 different species of plants have been identified in the Roman Colosseum. This is because seeds were planted through the waste of exotic animals brought from distant places of the Roman Empire and other parts of the world. The shipping company UPS was founded by 2 teenagers with a bicycle and $100 loaned by a friend in 1907. Today, they have 481,000 employees. There was a time when pizza restaurants in New York had to use cheese supplied by the well-known mobster Al Capone, and those that refused to use it were damaged and even set on fire. In 2015, Saudi Arabia proposed hosting the Olympic Games together with Bahrain, where all men's events would take place in Saudi Arabia and women's events in Bahrain, because at that time, women were prohibited from participating in sports in Saudi Arabia. But the International Olympic Committee did not allow them to submit the bid. Crocodiles do not have sweat glands. For that reason, they must cool themselves by leaving their jaws open for a while. Then it looks like they are simply there with their mouths open going, ah. Chocolate contains a small amount of caffeine. and if consumed in large quantities, it can cause mild reactions such as changes in heart rate or lack of sleep. The reason they suggest not using phones during airplane flights is not because of the risk of damaging the aircraft's communication equipment. Rather, it is because when someone makes a call at 32,808 feet in altitude, the signal bounces between multiple cellular towers, which contributes to saturating the network. The set where the car scene in the movie The Matrix Reloaded was filmed was extremely large. When it was dismantled, instead of discarding it, the material was reused to build low-cost housing in underprivileged areas in Mexico. Emperor penguins can dive up to 1,837 feet into the ocean. This is deeper than most submarines and more than double the depth an orca can reach. An average office desk can have up to 400 times more bacteria than a toilet. And according to a study, desks, phones, keyboards, and other personal objects belonging to men have 4 times more bacteria than those belonging to women. In a 1999 interview, the economist Milton Friedman said it was only a matter of time before a form of decentralized money existed on the internet, a very accurate prediction about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies years before they became popular. The programmer of the game Space Invaders, Tomohiro Nishikado, discovered that the processor load required to run the game decreased as there were fewer ships on the screen. Instead of correcting this, he left it to create a sense of increasing difficulty, becoming the first game to implement something like this. Bluetooth is named after Harald Bluetooth, the king of Denmark from 1,000 years ago. Even the logo is made from his initials in the Nordic runic alphabet. In 1443, King Sejong the Great created Hangul, the Korean alphabet. He did this in response to the great difficulty common people had in learning Chinese characters. The day of its publication is now a national holiday in both Koreas. When humans domesticated wolves unintentionally, we were promoting a syndrome that all dogs now have, which is characterized by cognitive difficulties, but especially the tendency to be hypersocial and to like all people. In 1943, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Philadelphia Eagles American football teams merged into a single team called the Steagles. This was due to limited resources during World War II. The country of Tonga has never been conquered or colonized. It is ruled by a king whose lineage traces back more than 1,000 years. The Mona Lisa painting has more than 30 layers of paint that were applied by Leonardo da Vinci. Some are thinner than the thickness of a human hair, so we will probably never know what is hidden in those lower layers. There is a plant called Ramonda cerbica that can return to life after being completely dry simply by adding water, which is why it is also called the phoenix plant. Its flowers are violet. Giraffes have long necks, but not long enough to reach the ground. That is why they must spread their legs in a somewhat awkward way when they drink water. Musician Jack White has made statements against Guinness World Records because they removed the record he achieved with the White Stripes for the shortest concert in the world when they played a single note. Guinness responded that they had to eliminate all categories that included the shortest things in duration, such as the shortest song or poem. The lion roar sound effects in the movie The Lion King are not actually lions. It is only the voice actor Frank Welker growling and shouting with a metal trash can over his head. The term redhead comes from the English word redhead used to refer to people with orange-toned hair, but they called it red because there was no separate word for the color orange until the year 1540. There is a type of berry in the Newfoundland region of Canada called bake apple, and people think the name comes from it tasting like baked apple. But that is not true. In reality, the name comes from the French phrase "ik appelle," which means, "What is this berry called?" A supermarket in the Netherlands launched an advertising campaign in which they implemented a rule that if more than 4 people were waiting in line to pay and no other register was open, you could take everything you had purchased for free. At its peak popularity, the Candy Crush application generated $956,000 every day and had more than 100 million unique users per month. A species of spider was named in honor of actor Harrison Ford. It was called Calponia harrisonfordi and was an act of gratitude toward Ford for narrating a documentary for the Natural History Museum of London in 1994. According to a study, happier cows can produce more nutritious milk. Higher serotonin levels in cows meant a greater amount of calcium in the milk. There are headbands shaped like cat ears called nekomimi that have a device which measures brain waves so they can move according to the emotions of the person wearing them, just like a real cat would. The deepest indoor swimming pool in the world is Nemo 33. It is located in Brussels, Belgium, and is 104.99 feet deep. It is generally used by divers for training. NASA has conducted many experiments in the Atacama Desert in South America because there are areas where the soil has no moisture and resembles the surface of other planets, such as Mars, to test whether it is possible to grow potatoes there. During the International Shooting Championship in 2012 in Kuwait, someone confused the national anthem of Kazakhstan with a parody version from the movie Borat. This happened when the gold medal was awarded to the shooter Maria Dmitrienko from that country. In the Giro d'Italia cycling competition in the 1914 edition, one of the riders decided to finish a stage by getting into a car. He thought no one would notice because the route was filled with fog. However, the judges discovered it and expelled him. This event remains a memorable story of this competition, which is still held today. The first firefighters in Rome organized themselves to create a profitable business. They would arrive at fires and do nothing until they agreed on a price to put out the fire. If they did not reach an agreement, they would leave or wait for everything to burn out and offer to buy the land at a very low price. The design of euro banknotes contains fictional bridges drawn to represent different architectural eras in Europe. They were invented to avoid giving more representation to any specific country. But a few years later, all those bridges were actually built in the Netherlands. Ritz crackers got their name from the Ritz hotels. These crackers were launched during the Great Depression, and the intention was for them to be associated with luxury like the hotel while still maintaining a low price. A person weighs more at the North Pole than at the equator. This is because planet Earth is wider at the equator, so people there are farther from Earth's center, resulting in less gravitational force in addition to the centrifugal force of rotation. However, the difference is so small that it is barely noticeable. Other factors affect weight more significantly. For the movie Crimson Peak from 2015, they had to build a complete mansion. This was after they were unable to find an ideal filming location, and many of the items used to complete the furniture and decoration belonged to the director Guillermo del Toro. Necker Island, located in the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean, was acquired by businessman Richard Branson in 1978 for $180,000, even though the expected auction price was $6 million. Currently, this billionaire lives on the island and does so to avoid paying as many taxes as he would in the United Kingdom. The Chinese word for contradiction, pronounced something like modon, is composed of the characters spear and shield. It is said that the word comes from a story about an ancient merchant who sold spears that could pierce any shield and shields that could not be pierced by any spear. A complete contradiction. During the construction of the One World Trade Center building, there was a Subway restaurant installed on the top floor inside a shipping container. As more floors were added to the building, the restaurant was moved up to the next level. Raising it each floor took about 2 hours. Birds usually fly in a V formation to reduce air resistance and conserve energy. Birds take turns going to the front, and when they get tired, they move to the back. The largest farm in the world is located in China, in the city of Mudanjiang. It is mainly dedicated to milk production and has an area similar to the entire country of Portugal. Toilet paper companies have gradually reduced the width of rolls, even reaching a reduction of up to 25% compared to those made years ago. This can be seen in the extra space left on toilet paper holders in bathrooms. The most isolated volcano on the planet is Mount Sidley in West Antarctica. It measures 13,781 feet, placing it among the tallest volcanoes in the world. To get there, special flights from the Antarctic base McMurdo are required, followed by a journey across ice that has never seen human activity. It has been inactive for millions of years. The director and screenwriter Aaron Sorkin, known for movies such as The Social Network, once mentioned in an interview that he sometimes showers many times a day. He does this to combat writer's block. If he cannot continue writing, he showers, dresses differently, and tries again. There are more than 1 million species of insects in the world that have been discovered and categorized, and each year, more than 7,000 new ones are added. Despite this pace, it is believed there are still more than 10 million insect species yet to be discovered. When Japanese people turn 100 years old, the Prime Minister sends them a silver cup as a gift to celebrate. But in recent years, too many people have been turning 100, so they had to find a way to make the cups cheaper. The Monty Python comedy film Life of Brian was funded almost entirely by musician George Harrison after they ran out of budget. Harrison provided the money simply because he wanted to see how the movie would turn out. Later, one of the actors mentioned that this act was like buying the most expensive movie ticket of all. In the original Dragon Ball Z manga, the author Akira Toriyama invented this Super Saiyan transformation only to make it easier to ink the drawings, since having white hair meant less time painting the characters who originally had black hair. Later in the animated series, they made it yellow or golden. One of Stephen Hawking's life goals was to appear in the television series Star Trek. He achieved this in 1993 and also fulfilled another dream in the scene where he appeared, playing cards with Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Great minds of physics gathered in space. According to Elon Musk, the Tesla logo is inspired by one of the internal parts of an electric motor that also forms a T-shape. Many mountains and mountain ranges on Saturn's moon Titan have names of places from Middle-earth that appear in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, mainly in The Lord of the Rings, such as Mount Doom, Erebor, or the Lonely Mountain, the Misty Mountains, and the White Mountains, among others. The production company 20th Century Fox tried to cancel the movie Deadpool while it was in production with a budget cut of $7 million because they thought it would be a failure. Even so, the writers managed to remove extra characters and scenes to fit the budget. In the end, it was a box office success. In the movie Tron from 1982, the character Pac-Man can be briefly seen ready to eat yellow dots, as in the video game. This happens while a character is observing a screen full of circuits. At that time, the video game had only been released 2 years earlier. In the movie Moana, the clumsy chicken appears in one scene trying to eat a rock. This is a reference to the actor The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, who voices the character Maui, whom the chicken later also tries to eat. Among the roles actor Sean Connery rejected at some point during his career are John Hammond in Jurassic Park, Morpheus in The Matrix, Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs, Dumbledore in Harry Potter, and Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings. The Chevrolet Suburban has its own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. This was in honor of its more than 2,000 appearances in movies since 1960. It is the first inanimate object to have a star in that place. In the first quarter of 2019, Facebook deleted about 2 billion fake accounts from the social network, more than double the average number of accounts they normally deleted each month, and they did not specify the reason for this action. The Andromeda Galaxy appears approximately 8 times larger than the Moon in the night sky, but it is difficult to distinguish unless you are in an area without light pollution. The actor Anthony Mackie, known for being Falcon in the Marvel Universe, once stated in an interview that raccoon meat is one of the best he has ever tasted. Those present did not know whether he was joking or not. In fact, raccoon was a staple food in the southern United States in the 19th century and was part of Thanksgiving meals. But with the industrialized production of farm animals, it stopped being popular. On the island of Boracay in the Philippines, only white automobiles are allowed. If they are another color, they cannot circulate. But this rule applies to four-wheeled motor vehicles, so there are vehicles such as motorcycles that can be other colors. Great white sharks can avoid passing through an area for more than 1 year if they saw an orca nearby. Since it is their only natural predator, they fear it and may leave even if it is their favorite hunting location, even if the orca was only passing through. The first time a supercomputer defeated a champion chess player was in 1995, and progress was so rapid that now no champion has managed to defeat a supercomputer since the year 2005. In the city of Laguna, Brazil, bottlenose dolphins cooperate with local fishermen to catch silverfish. This alliance has been documented since 1847. The dolphins herd schools toward the shore and then signal fishermen waiting in the water to cast their nets. And in the end, they are given fish as a reward. The Romans had a formula to make concrete that was lost after the fall of the Roman Empire, until it was reinvented many years later. They made it by mixing lime and volcanic rock, which then had a chemical reaction helped by sea algae. Deer jump as high as they can when they feel they are in danger as a way to warn predators that they are not worth the effort of chasing. Among the countries that have many more men than women are the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, India, China, and Qatar, while among those that have more women than men are Russia, Lithuania, Hong Kong, the Bahamas, and Belarus. The main reasons for these imbalances are labor migration, gender preference before birth, and life expectancy. The journalist Sarah Bongiorni and her family tried to live without products made in China for 1 year, which turned out to be almost impossible. She documented it in her book, A Year Without Made in China. A parking meter officer in New York was arrested for stealing coins. He took between $190 and $600 each week for a total of $90,000 over 6 years. Bank employees suspected him because he always deposited too many coins into his account while still wearing his uniform. That was not very smart. Fanta Colita is a soda flavor of this brand that is sold exclusively in Costa Rica. Its flavor is a mixture of strawberry, vanilla, and bubblegum. The longest literary work ever written is a fan fiction based on the series Loud House that has 2,328 chapters with a total of more than 32 million words. For reference, the 7 Harry Potter books total just over 1 million words. This fanfic includes characters such as Peter Griffin, Naruto, Galactus, Bowser, and thousands more. It is so long because the author included, among other things, complete wiki articles as character descriptions. There is a bathroom on a mountain in Siberia that is located 8,500 feet above sea level, which is used by workers at a nearby weather station, and it is considered the loneliest bathroom in the world. Corn needs to be cooked with lime so the body can properly absorb its nutrients. This is something native people of the American continent knew long ago. However, the Europeans who arrived did not know this, which caused many deaths from poor nutrition during the early years of colonization in different regions. The human brain has a negative tendency to seek bad news. This is an evolutionary trait that emerged in ancient humans as a survival mechanism. In 2004, farmers in a region of India began using Coca-Cola and Pepsi as pesticides to protect their crops. This became popular for some time because they worked well for their purpose and were a cheaper method. Apollo 13 astronaut Jim Lovell had a cameo in the movie Apollo 13. He chose to play the captain of the ship that originally rescued him, since that was the rank he held when he retired from the naval forces to become an astronaut. In Hawaii, advertisements and billboards are prohibited because they were considered to obstruct views of the natural landscapes. A little more than 50% of the nutrient-rich dust that covers the Amazon rainforest comes from a single valley called the Bodeli Depression in the country of Chad, in the Sahara Desert in Africa. Yogi Bear and other Hanna-Barbera characters had a collar or something around their neck that separated their head from their body. This was done intentionally, so animators only had to draw the head in each frame when they spoke. The smallest reptile in the world is the Bruchisia microchameleon, which is so small that it can fit on a fingernail or stand on the head of a matchstick. The sun appears yellow because of atmospheric scattering. Outside Earth, the sun appears white because it contains the entire visible light spectrum. But when passing through Earth's atmosphere, air molecules scatter blue wavelengths more strongly, reducing their presence in the direct light that reaches our eyes. There is a region in Canada called Hudson Bay where there is less gravity than in the rest of the world. If you go to that place, you weigh less, although the difference is very small. Scientists do not know exactly why this happens, but it is believed to be due to convection of the Earth's crust in that area. The only countries that use Fahrenheit as the unit of temperature measurement are Belize, the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, Palau, and the United States. In all other countries, Celsius is used. On average, producing each episode of the series Game of Thrones cost between $2 and $3 million, which is almost 3 times more than producing a normal television episode. In some countries, a technique is used on meat in which carbon monoxide is added to make it appear fresher. This is prohibited in Canada, Japan, Singapore, and throughout Europe. When the original Incredible Hulk series was very successful, Marvel executives believed that someone would eventually create a similar series with a female protagonist. So they asked Stan Lee to create such a character so no one else could do it first and claim ownership. This is how She-Hulk was created. The story of Romeo and Juliet was actually written as a short novel by Matteo Bandello. Later, William Shakespeare, based on that story, wrote the play that remains popular to this day. NASA named the 1997 movie Gattaca as the most accurate and realistic science fiction film of all. People who smoke are 4 times more likely to develop gray hair during their lifetime than people who do not smoke. From 2011 to 2016, only 1 jaguar was identified in the wild in the United States near the border with Mexico, which they named El Jefe. Since 2017, 2 more jaguars have been discovered in the area. During the era of alcohol prohibition in the United States, wine producers began selling bricks of concentrated grape juice. They came with precise instructions on what not to do, so that it would not ferment and accidentally turn into wine. People simply ignored these warnings and prepared it at home. Irukandji jellyfish found in Australia measure about 0.39 inches. They are very small, but despite that, they are among the most venomous jellyfish in the world, 100 times more than a cobra. Currently, about 10% of the entire population of Pingalap Island in Micronesia has total color blindness. This condition was traced back to an ancestor who was one of the 20 people who survived a typhoon that struck the island in 1775. In North Korea, when people go to get a haircut, they are required to choose one of 21 government-approved hairstyles, 15 for women and 6 for men. Swimmer Michael Phelps won 23 Olympic gold medals. That is more than 80% of all countries that have competed. When the singer Frank Sinatra died on May 14, 1998, the lights of casinos in Las Vegas were dimmed or turned off completely. In addition, casinos stopped operating for 1 minute in his honor. Dolphins do not drink seawater because it is harmful to them. Instead, all the liquid they need comes directly from their food. Dogs have many nerve endings in their ears, so when they are touched, they release endorphins, which relax them and make them feel very good. Since it was discovered in 1930, the dwarf planet Pluto has not completed a full orbit. It will achieve this on Monday, March 23, 2178. The first firecrackers were made in China when people realized that if bamboo was burned, it would explode. This is because bamboo grows so fast that air bubbles form inside it that explode when heated. The Dutch artist Bernd Smilde discovered how to create small clouds inside rooms using a balance of humidity, lighting, temperature, and air current. He integrates the clouds into his artistic work. There is a special theater in the United Kingdom called an edible cinema, where during each movie they give you gourmet dishes to eat at specific parts of the film that relate to the scenes. This is meant to create a unique experience, according to them. When he began studying at Cambridge University, Isaac Newton worked as a waiter and room cleaner. He did this for some time until he later obtained a scholarship. The IBM 2311 hard disk drive, released in 1964, could store up to 7 megabytes of data and was the size of a freezer. 7 megabytes is equivalent to only 2 songs in MP3 format, or 2 12-megapixel photographs. There are more microorganisms living in a spoonful of soil taken from a forest or jungle than the number of people living in the entire world. Until recently, there was a law in the city of Paris that required local bakeries to alternate their vacation days so there would be enough bread in the city during holidays. The driest place in the world is in Antarctica, in an area called the McMurdo Dry Valleys, where it is believed that it has not rained in more than 2 million years. The poster of the 1978 movie Halloween has a hidden screaming face. It is formed in the hand holding the knife. Humans have a highly developed sense for orienting themselves and finding water. Our smell receptors are especially good at detecting geosmin, a molecule produced by bacteria and algae, especially when it mixes with ozone and water. That smell of wet earth allows us to perceive how recent rainfall was in a place. It developed strongly because it helped our ancestors survive. George Lucas scheduled a trip to Hawaii on the same weekend as the release of the first Star Wars movie, which he directed and wrote. All of this was to be very far away and avoid reading bad reviews. However, when he began to see that it was a success, he immediately canceled that trip. There is a higher percentage of left-handed people competing professionally in sports that require fast reactions, such as baseball, cricket, or table tennis, than in slower sports, such as badminton, tennis, or squash. The fastest roller coaster in the world is Formula Rossa, located at Ferrari World Theme Park in Abu Dhabi. It reaches a maximum speed of 149.13 miles per hour, simulating the experience of a Formula One car. Passengers must wear protective goggles at all times. In New York City, over the past 50 years, the price of a slice of pizza has increased at the same pace as the price of a subway ticket, being almost the same, and when one rises, the other follows immediately. Since merging with the Musical.ly application and expanding to most countries, TikTok surpassed Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat in downloads, and currently has 500 million active users per month. The Tour de France logo has a hidden drawing of a cyclist. The letter O is the rear wheel, and the yellow circle is the front wheel. This circle represents the color of the jersey worn by the leader of the classification. The smallest poisonous frog in the world measures only 0.39 inches. and its defense mechanism consists of expelling liquid poison through the pores of its skin. In South Africa, a car accessory that was a flamethrower was once sold. It was designed to scare away thieves and was completely legal, but it was not very successful. In the year 2006, the actor Leonardo DiCaprio sold his collection of Star Wars and G.I. Joe toys for $100,000, a very large collection. He donated this money to organizations dedicated to protecting the environment. There is an insect called the Lord Howe Island stick insect, or tree lobster, that is among the largest in the world. It measures almost the same as a human hand and can only be found on a small island near Australia. The video game company Tencent Games, known for making the mobile game Clash of Clans, earned more money in 2018 than EA, Activision, Ubisoft, and Nintendo combined. The Argentine black and white tegu has a unique defense mechanism. It often scares predators by running on its two hind legs to give the impression that it is larger. New Zealand adventurer Chloe Phillips Harris was detained and denied entry into Kazakhstan in 2016 because officials did not believe New Zealand existed since the map in the detention room was incorrect and did not include the country. The name bazooka comes from a homemade musical instrument invented by American comedian Bob Burns in the 1930s that resembled the anti-tank weapon developed by the United States Army for World War II. The nickname became popular in 1943. 95% of the decisions you make were already made before you became aware of them by your subconscious. On average, every day, 1 out of every 4 people in the world consumes a beverage from the Coca-Cola Company. The designer of the popular Google logo, Ruth Kadar, once mentioned that the letters use the primary colors blue, red, and yellow, except for the letter L, which is green. She did this on purpose to demonstrate that the company was willing to be rebellious and not follow traditional rules. The oldest musical instruments are approximately 43,000 years old. They were flutes made from bird and mammoth bones. The texture added to science fiction spaceship models is called greeble and is intended to make them appear more complex. A real spaceship would not have this texture. Palm trees are monocots, meaning they have only one cotyledon in the seed, parallel veins in the leaves, and fibrous roots. This means they are more closely related to grass and corn than to trees such as pines and maples. The United States Navy trained 36 dolphins so they could stop people using poisoned darts. But when Hurricane Katrina occurred in 2005, the dolphins were lost in the Gulf of Mexico and to this day have not been found. Only one airplane was allowed to fly in the United States on September 11, 2001, after the attacks on the Twin Towers. A plane traveling from San Diego to Miami, carrying a special antidote for venom from a poisonous snake bite, was escorted at all times by 2 fighter jets. The highest ambient temperature ever recorded was in El Azizia in Libya on September 13, 1922. On that occasion, the thermometer recorded 136.4 degrees Fahrenheit. 43 buildings in New York City have their own postal code due to their size, the number of workers inside, and the amount of money they generate. The actor Sean Connery was once offered the opportunity to play for the Manchester United soccer team, but he rejected the offer because he preferred to pursue acting. In the city of Los Angeles, 96 million plastic balls are used to cover the drinking water reservoir to prevent evaporation. This saves enough water for the consumption of more than 8,000 people each year. Many cathedrals are cruciform, meaning they have the shape of a cross when viewed from above, and apparently they were built this way so God could distinguish them. When the movie Apollo 13 was shown to a test audience to get their opinion, one of the viewers mentioned that he did not like it because it had a typical Hollywood ending where everyone survived. What he did not know is that this movie is completely based on real events. Between 45 and 75% of astronauts suffer from space adaptation syndrome, which causes dizziness, headaches, nausea, and general discomfort. But it always goes away in less than 72 hours, and they do not experience it again afterward. The artificial sweetener known as Splenda was discovered by accident in 1976, when a researcher misunderstood the instruction to test the compound and thought he was being told to taste it. The Japanese invaded the island of Taiwan in 1895 with the intention of turning it into a model colony with a high quality of life. As a result, over time, people in Taiwan did not develop resentment toward the Japanese, unlike in other places they invaded. Cleopatra is known for being the last ruler of ancient Egypt before it became a province of the Roman Empire. At that time, the Great Pyramid was already more than 2,500 years old. Opossums have a pink glow when observed under ultraviolet light, and the exact reason or purpose of this glow is still not known. In addition, they are among the marsupials with the lowest body temperature, so low that the rabies virus cannot survive in their bodies. Lobsters have teeth in their stomach that they use to chew their food. They are structures similar to molars that move to grind the food. Deer antlers are the fastest growing tissue in the entire animal kingdom. They can extend up to 1.18 inches every 2 days during the growth cycle. According to a study, the average high school student currently has the same level of stress as a person hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital in the 50s. According to a study, babies who use pacifiers more often have a higher predisposition to ear pain. This is related to pressure changes inside the ear caused by suction. In 2009, scientists in Iceland were drilling into the earth and accidentally reached a magma chamber at a depth of 1.30 miles. This became the first magma geothermal energy source to be used. It generates enough power to provide electricity to 80,000 homes. All mammals have the same number of vertebrae in their neck, 7, except for 2 species, manatees and sloths. The mechanism of traditional hard drives is so sensitive to vibrations that simply shouting at them can affect their operating efficiency.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.